What's going on, Guardians? It's Tizzle here. In this video, I am going to be giving you some advice on things you can do to easily solo flawless the new dungeon, Spire of the Watcher. I will go over some loadout suggestions for each class and give little tidbits of advice for each encounter. Stick around to the end of the video too, as I have a special tip that will really help with the boss room. And before we get fully into it, a like on this video would really help me out, and if you aren't subscribed already, I would really appreciate that too. Anyways, let's get to it. So I've only soloed this on my Warlock, but I have a pretty good idea of what I would use for the other characters as well. For Warlock, I used a Starfire Protocol build throughout the whole dungeon. My first clear was with my clanmates on Warlock, and the fusion grenades paired with Touch of Flame and the Fragment Ember of Ashes to increase Scorch stacks, which allow for more ignitions, had some incredible damage output. Because I was running this build, I went with Witherhoard in the kinetic slot, Callous Mini Tool for my energy weapon, and the Avalanche Machine Gun in my heavy slot. This came in nice at times for ad clear, and it is good for proccing the exotic perk on Starfire Protocol, where dealing damage while in an Empowering Rift or Well of Radiance gives you grenade energy. With this build, I never really had to worry about getting ammo for a damage phase. That being said, typically when you run solo, ammo isn't much of an issue. In the boss room, I had tons of heavy and special on the ground. For the ad clear sections, a Devour Warlock could also be very strong. Personally, I would run it with Controverse Hold. This will allow you to stay alive by proccing Devour and then getting kills to get your health back. When I ran on my Hunter, I used Omnioculus for the invisibility and damage resistance. The first 3 solo flawless dungeons I ever did were on a Void Hunter, because Invis can get you out of so many jams. However, the Assassin's Cowl Arc Hunter is also a top tier pick, especially for the ad clear sections. I used that build to solo flawless every dungeon last season, and it's absolutely amazing. However, in this dungeon, a lot of enemies are floating in the sky, so it definitely loses some viability due to that. But use what you are comfortable with. Finally, on Titan, I would recommend Solar, as the constant health regeneration is amazing. I would suggest running healing grenades as well, and the Fragment Ember of Empyrean, which allows you to extend restoration with solar kills. So you just run around with your hammer and bonk things or get kills with a solar energy weapon, and you will have constant health regeneration. For exotics, you can run Loreley Splendor Helm for survivability, as that loadout is damn near invincible, or you can run Syntheseps for more damage output, but a little bit less survivability. Both are great picks in my opinion, and the Syntheseps Solar Titan is currently my favorite build in the game. Both are great picks. I would suggest swapping to Synthos regardless though for damage phases, as they boost your super damage. I was actually going to run this for my solo flawless, but then in my first clear, I saw how good the fusion grenades were, so I decided to go with Solar Warlock. Arc Titan with Heart of Inmost Light is also very effective, and you can get health back from melee kills. And Void Titan would not be a bad choice either, thanks to Bubble being able to buff your weapon damage greatly, and you can have survivability from the overshield from your barricade, as well as the Fragment Echo of Leeching to give you health regen on melee kills. For me personally though, I would go with Solar Titan. Restoration is great for survivability, and the damage output you can get from it is amazing with Radiant and either of the supers, though for safety's sake, I would go with the Throwing Hammers. So now that we have covered some strong builds to use depending on your playstyle and class preference, let's talk mods. First and foremost, let us start with the strongest ones. Those come from the Artifact this season, and they are Weakened Clear and Solo Operative. Weakened Clear allows you to debuff a boss for 20 seconds. And a bit longer if you use Witherhoard. That is extremely strong, especially in solo play. I cannot stress enough how amazing Witherhoard is for this dungeon, as there are a ton of enemies constantly spawning in. It is also great for passive damage to the boss and the Hydras, and it now debuffs bosses if you run this mod. I can't recommend Weakened Clear enough. And for the next mod, we have Solo Operative. This gives a flat 15% buff to all your damage, and it seems to stack with any other damage buff in the game. High Energy Fire, Font of Might, doesn't matter, it stacks with all of it. It buffs supers, abilities, and your weapons. So yeah, it is pretty much a no-brainer. Each mod costs 5 energy, so unfortunately you will not have any energy room left on your class item, but in my opinion, it is 100% worth it. This dungeon took me 2 hours to solo, and I had both of these on. My clear would have taken even longer without them. The next mod I highly recommend on a solar subclass is Well of Life. This gives you constant health regeneration when you pick up a solar elemental well. In the run on my Warlock, I used tons of grenades to make wells with elemental ordnance. In the 2 boss fights, you are under constant pressure from the adds, so it can be really tough to regenerate your health sometimes. This will really help with that. But as I mentioned with Titan, you could also just run healing grenades, but with the Starfire build, that really isn't an option. Karnstein armlets could also be a play on Warlock, and you could just swap to Starfire Protocol for damage phases. It's up to you. So we have covered the classes, and we have covered some exotics and mods to use. So now let's go encounter by encounter, and I will give my weapon loadout suggestions and some tips and tricks. So the opening encounter has a ton of enemies that you have to contest with while you activate the conduits. As a result, you need good ad clear weapons. Witherhorde is absolutely amazing at taking out groups of enemies, and you can shoot it at the Cyclopses way up on the cliff as well. I had a sword with Eager Edge on for movement, but a machine gun would be pretty great for this encounter as well. Just take the opening encounter slow and steady and you should be fine. If you are overrun by ads, take cover and do some ad management before continuing on. This is not a speedrun guide. This is to show you how to safely beat the dungeon solo without dying. It doesn't matter how long you take. Prioritize your life above everything else. I was extremely cautious and I was able to solo it on my first attempt. This dungeon, more than most, is about patience more than anything I find. It feels more like a war of attrition rather than a hard test of combat skill. So yeah, just take your time and play your life. After the first encounter, you have a long traversal section. If you want, on Warlock you can use Heat Rises, or on Titan you could Lion Ramp and Sword Skate your way across. But this is not the safe way. It is best to have a scout rifle here, and you can just plink away at the ads and take your time. Go with the jump you feel most confident with. I used a Stompy Hunter with triple jump, a Strafe Glide Titan and with no movement exotic, and Strafe Glide on my Warlock. I also had Heat Rises as a backup in case I needed to Icarus Dash twice. The big thing here is going with what you are most used to and comfortable with. I love Burst Glide for the fast movement, but Strafe is what I use when I have to be safe and can't die. Next up, we have the Ascend encounter. I use my Callus Mini Tool here, but an auto rifle might be better. I solo flawless this on the first day, so the API was down to help with server errors that were kicking people out of the dungeon. Otherwise, I probably would have swapped to an auto rifle. It just gives you a bit more range to shoot some of the nodes and shoot enemies from a safer distance. Same goes for the Harpy boss encounter. A little more range than an SMG would definitely be good in my opinion for the Harpies that float off in the air. Witherhorde is once again a top tier pick for this encounter as enemies are really grouped up. There are safe places to shoot each node, but I used Heat Rises on my Warlock to get some easier angles on them. But again, this encounter is not overly difficult, you just have to be patient. Don't press. Take out ads as you go. And don't be afraid to lose your Arctician buff either. You can always kill another Minotaur to get the buff back, so just work your way around slow and steady and you will be fine. Following this, we have the Harpy boss, Achelous, the Siren's Current. This boss actually took me 8 phases to kill, though I should have done it in 7. I had a machine gun on for ad clear and because I was using my grenades for DPS anyways. However, if you want to beat this boss in less phases, I would recommend a God Roll linear fusion rifle. Cataclysmic with bait and switch is probably the best, but a God Roll Taipan would do just fine as well. Field Prep Frenzy would be a really good roll on that. The trouble with this boss on a Warlock is it moves, and if you're a Warlock, you have to stand in your well for grenade regeneration. Ideally, you would move forward while shooting the boss. Try and take out as many ads as possible before DPS so that they aren't flinching you off your shots, and so that they don't kill you. Again, I used a well, so survivability was fine, but I had to be stationary. A Tether Hunter or a Star Eater Scales Golden Gun or Blade Barrage would also be good, and a Bubble Titan or Solar Titan with Radiant would also be great. For Warlock, I still think well is the play. You could run High Energy Fire and Supreme Wellmaker with Elemental Charge to get charged with light every DPS phase. This would allow you to use the well and fusion grenades off the rip, and then leave the well and have High Energy Fire while you shoot a linear fusion rifle. If I could go back, this is how I would have done it. However, as I mentioned before, the API was down, so unfortunately I couldn't transfer over my linear fusion rifle. And as I said before, I would have preferred an auto rifle over an SMG for those long range Harpies. However, the heavy machine gun came in quite handy for taking them out. As for the time in between damage phases, you can go as fast or as slow as you want. I ran my solo flawless right after my first clear, so I was not very familiar with the node locations. But if you watch my whole solo run, you can see I learned the node locations better by the end. You can actually get all the nodes done with just one Arctician buff if you are fast enough and very efficient. You just have to watch out for the ads as they constantly spawn in. So I would often get a grenade kill to make a solar well and pick it up to activate Well of Life. And I also ran healing rifts with my Starfire protocol, so you could drop a healing rift, get a grenade kill, and get your healing rift right back. This came in great for survivability. And don't be afraid to panic pop a well if it means saving your life. I had to do it. Also, you want to run Ashes to Assets on your solar helmet for extra super energy on grenade kills. It comes in very handy and you will get your well easily for every damage phase. That is about all I have for this encounter. Let's look at the next one. The next one is descending through the 3 rooms. Again, Witherhoard is amazing here. Not much to this one, but one big piece of advice is find the platform where you can shoot all 5 nodes. There's a spot to see them all on each level, so scope out the nodes and then shoot. It will make your life much easier. As for the fan sections, obviously just go slow and steady. Drop down just as the slow blade is passing under your feet and you won't get hit. And again, use whatever jump you are comfortable with. Then, when you get to the very bottom room, watch out for the arc pulses. They have a way wider range than you think. I died when I was running it with my friends and I was at least 3 feet away from them. Be extra careful around these. The third and final room has 4 nodes on each wall and 1 in the middle. My advice is shoot the middle one from the outside. Don't even go in and risk dying to the arc thing. Also, when you go to shoot the nodes, maybe start with the middle one if you can. I didn't do this, but thinking about it now, that would have been the safe play. From there, we have the final boss room. First of all, jump down very carefully, as you don't want to die on your way into the room. This boss took me 6 phases, but I blew 1 phase by not having Well of Radiance, so it should have been 5. That being said, I think if I ran a rocket launcher instead of a machine gun, I could have gotten it done easily in 5 and maybe in 4. The Starfire grenades go very hard here. However, the machine gun did come in nice for ad clear at times, so it is really up to you. The big thing with this room is knowing where the nodes are that you have to shoot. My solo clear was only my 2nd clear overall, so I did a horrible job at this. I sucked at remembering where each of the nodes was, so that made this fight take way longer than it should have. However, this is where the biggest tip of the whole video comes into play. I ran it back a 3rd time with my clanmates and tested if Warmind cells would activate the nodes, and wouldn't you know it, they do. This would have easily shaved 20 minutes off my run. So my advice would be to run the Ikelos SMG and Global Reach on your armor. This increases the blast radius of the cells. The outside conduit ones aren't too bad to hit, but the inside room I really struggled with. But you can lay down a Witherhoard and pull out your SMG, and in about 6 kills you will spawn a cell. The only trick is, you have to make sure that you have the Arctrician buff when you shoot the cell. If you don't, it won't work. But I confirmed numerous times that it does work when I ran it on my Titan with my friends. It's such a cool trick and honestly so helpful for when you are solo. The ads and boss completely smother you while you are solo, so this makes hitting those nodes a breeze. Of all the tips and tricks in this video, this is the one I wish I had known the most for my run. It's honestly such a good trick, and like I said, it would have shaved so much time off my run. Make sure to tell your friends about it, as it will also make team clears that much quicker and easier. As for the boss fight, the 2 Hydras spawn in off the rip. You want to try and deal with these guys right away. I would shoot a Witherhoard and throw a fusion grenade and they would die. Then the Minotaurs spawn in. A fusion grenade takes them out too, but they often blink right through it if you time it wrong. Regardless, get them down, get the buff, and then do your best to take out the nodes. But do not press. You want to always be moving in the boss room. It is a lot like the tank room in the Proving Ground strike. You can't stop moving. Supplicants spawn all the time and they are super hard to see coming. They are the toughest part of this room in my opinion, because you have to run from them or kill them or they will blow up on you and kill you. The boss's Void Beam is also a pain and you don't want to get hit by that. 100 resilience and void resistance is highly recommended. But yeah, don't press and pick your spots. Sometimes I had to wait ages to shoot the nodes just because I was prioritizing my life. But that's okay. You have to play safe at this point because you're almost there. Once it is time for damage phase, you want to place your well behind cover, right as the prompt says Reactor Core Purged. This will give you max time out of your well for DPS. Lob a Witherhoard to debuff the boss with Weakened Clear and go to town with your grenades. If you're on a Hunter or Titan, well, you made it this far, so just be safe. Titan, I recommend Solar with Syntheseps. Do some DPS early on, then pop Super when the Wyvern is close. Try to have Roaring Flames ×3 for more damage. Hunters, I would tether in the middle or do a Star Eater Scales Blade Barrage, or maybe a Gathering Storm and then Rockets and Witherhoard. On Hunter, you will have to move around a lot and avoid the boss's Void Blasts. Solar Titan can tank it because you will be in your super and you can use cover while in your super. Warlock is fine in a Well of Radiance, but Hunter, you just have to play carefully. But yeah, rinse and repeat a bunch of damage phases, always moving and playing your life, and before you know it, you will be done. Anyways, that's it. I hope this video helped you out, and if it did, then a like and subscription would be greatly appreciated. I've learned so much today from running it once solo and 3 times with my clanmates. We did an all Arc and all Void run, and we tried different boss DPS strats each time. I definitely think Linears is the play for the Harpy, and Rockets and Supers for the Wyvern. I'm sure if I went back for the solo flawless now, it would go quicker, in large part to the tips and tricks from this video. So hopefully it helps you get the new emblem, and if it does, let me know down in the comments. And finally, if you made it this far, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. Good luck with your solo flawless attempts, and take care.